Chapter 201, Putting on a Show. Everyone, the Mage of the Hour will be here soon, Brother Assist announced as he swept his gaze over to the crowd before him, whispering to young Master Han after, the ones who should be here are not here, yet many of those who shouldn't be here are here. Are you referring to Corrals and Cloud Herders people? Young Master Han asked, chuckling. Brother Assist nodded his head. If someone of Corrals is really planning to come, do you think I'll be able to calmly sit here? I will not even be here if that's the case. Young Master Han continued to chuckle. What happened? Brother Assist inquired. I'm not too sure, but it seems that Miles has already met Brave Surge, young Master Han answered. The same goes for Cloud Herder, I guess. To think that their flyers actually worked, Brother Assist was very surprised. Young Master Han shrugged his shoulders. Brother Assist looked around once more, saying to young Master Han, I've spotted some familiar looking faces that are acting furtive, as if they don't want to call attention to themselves. Young Master Han nodded his head. I've spotted them as well. The two men instinctively gazed over to these few people who were trying lie low among the many attendees for their current event. Let's stop minding them and just focus on this conference. Young Master Han said. Brother Assist nodded his head and signaled War Without Wounds. War Without Wounds stepped away from the dimly lit corner that he had been staying in, causing the voices in bar to die down. What is that? Is it a pet? I've never heard that there is a pet system in Parallel World. Everyone started to talk again, but the topic of their conversations was now the strange creature before them, War Without Wounds. Truly, his mismatched outfit was just too bizarre a sight. Since this was a Vermo, physical appearance was a major concern for every player. While it was important for equipment to have decent stats, the equipment's designs should also appeal to the public's aesthetic taste. Right now, War Without Wounds was like a piece of abstract art painting in the eyes of others, unable to be described. Royal Godcall laughed until he was bending over, drawing the attention of a few people. Among these few people was Oathless Sword, who promptly called out to him, Royal, what are you doing here? A guild leader might not necessarily know every member of his or her guild, but given Royal Godcall's fame in the online gaming community, Oathless Sword had been keeping an eye on him. In fact, Oathless Sword would have invited him to be a core member of Traversing Four Seas had it not been for Royal Godcall's young age and the fact that the latter was not playing a mage, the job class that he was best at. Royal Godcall accidentally exposed himself due to his extreme glee, but he quickly turned the tables on Oathless Sword. Guild leader, you're here, too? Do you also wish to know that mage? Why didn't you ask me directly? I know him as well. Royal Godcall was no longer worried about revealing this to Oathless Sword as the latter had already paid the fee. Oathless Sword did not really feel much regret at having paid a measly sum of 100 gold coins. Instead, he was happy to learn that he had a guild member that personally knew the mage, as it would open doors to broaching the subject of recruitment. The many leaders present in this meeting would certainly be able to meet the mage, and some of them might even be able to add him as a friend, but they would be hard-pressed to open the topic of recruitment to the mage. War Without Wounds was in great distress right now for garnering such a reaction from the players in the bar just by appearing before them. Brother Assist came forward and sympathetically patted his shoulders. You'll get extra compensation for this. War Without Wounds gritted his teeth and steeled his heart. Ignoring the shame he was feeling, he swaggered like always toward the bar entrance. They had already planned this beforehand. Once Goofy came through the door, War Without Wounds would grab a hold of his shoulder to prevent him from escaping. Ray, lock the other door. Brother Assist said to Ray. The bar had two sets of doors, one on the left and one on the right. War Without Wounds was currently guarding the right door. Ray nodded his head. He could do this as the owner of the establishment, yet his action of locking the left door made many leaders suspicious. Guarding the right door and locking the left door. No matter how one looked at it, this seemed like a trap set to kill them off in one go. The leaders with rich fighting experience, and especially those who tried to hide themselves earlier, immediately went on guard. They were even thinking of bolting out before anything could happen. Brother Assist totally did not expect everyone to be alarmed by their actions, so he tried as best as he could to come up with a reasonable explanation for it. It's just to ensure that we are not interrupted by uninvolved people. You guys paid for this information. Wouldn't it be unfair to you all if someone accidentally barges in on us and freely gets to hear this information as well? He would of course never mention to them that they were actually doing this to prevent the product from running away. All the leaders easily accepted this reasoning and no longer paid attention to Ray locking the door. Instead, they turned their attention to the bizarre-looking War Without Wounds who was guarding the left door. It was at this point that the left door creaked open, and a mage dressed in black robe appeared before the waiting crowd. The leaders eagerly studied the mage's appearance, but his face was unfortunately covered. Those who personally knew Gufei could tell at a glance that it was him. Brother Assist could not fathom why Gufei was covering his face, but he still signaled War Without Wounds with a furtive glance. "Haha, why are you here?" War Without Wounds warmly extended his arms to clutch Gufei's shoulders. Unexpectedly, Gufei dodged War Without Wounds' outstretched arms and stared at him with wide eyes. "Who are you?" "It's me," War Without Wounds hurriedly said to Gufei. "What's up with your getup?" Gufei asked, perplexed. "It's a long story," War Without Wounds coughed as he tried to grab him once more, yet Gufei dodged his hands again and approached Brother Assist. "Why did you call for me?" Brother Assist was about to speak when Gufei shot his hand out to stop him. "Wait for me in the usual private room, I'll go in once I'm done with my business." "Ah, what business is this?" Brother Assist froze. Gufei tossed one gold coin to Ray, who felt stunned upon seeing his familiar action. Gufei then flipped over a bench and pulled out his sword. "Bounty mission. Please leave if you're not involved." The whole venue came alive at once. Each of them was an influential figure in Yunjuan City, so they had long heard of a mage passionately doing bounty mission. Rumors had it that his skill was top-notch and that he had never lost his bounty. Some even wanted to recruit him right away, but this mage was so occupied with chasing his bounty mission targets that even catching a glimpse of him was hard. A few individuals who had luckily encountered the mage in the middle of doing bounty mission would patiently wait for him to finish his business to exchange a few words after. But once he was done with his mission and just as they were getting ready to greet him, the mage would actually disappear in a wide glow. Nobody knew that there was a bounty mission accessory called Windchaser's Emblem that could teleport its wearer to the bounty assignment hall. So those who had seen this scene actually thought that the mage had used a teleportation scroll to leave the place after finishing his bounty mission, which thoroughly impressed them of his dedication and extravagance. Looking at Brother Assist and his companion's expression, all could tell that the close combat mage 27,149 that they had been waiting for was this black-clothed mage. While Gufei's acquaintances could recognize him just from his body frame and attire, those who were not that familiar with him, like Drifting, only identified Gufei upon seeing him toss one gold coin and shout out bounty mission. Drifting smiled at this. "It truly is him." Another person who met Gufei through this bounty hunting was Silver Moon, and it was at this very moment that Silver Moon connected the dots from this current scene to that episode back in Y City. Gufei's action shocked everyone present, especially when he mindlessly pointed his sword at several directions to distract his real target. "It's you. Can everyone kindly make way please?" Nobody knew who was his actual target, and those with park points on them felt that he was targeting them instead. Even those who did not have any park value on them were so shocked by him that they were all subconsciously trying to get out of his way. There were not many top experts in the online gaming community, and it would be too coincidental for all of them to spawn in Yunjuan City and become guild or mercenary leaders. Being a guild leader did not equate to having superb fighting ability, and their strength lay more on spotting a talent among the crowd. Not having indomitable fighting prowess and coming in this conference unaccompanied, it was hardly surprising that these leaders did not feel safe to be in the presence of the legendary insta-kill mage. Make way. Make way. Spells do not discriminate among people. Gufei showily flourished his sword about as he started chanting a spell. This caused everyone to become even more flustered. Bars were a place where people had to share a limited space with others. If a mage were to cast an AO spell, the result would therefore be disastrous. Blazing tree of 1,000 Inferno. Arise. Gufei chose a random spot to point and chanted, causing everyone to scamper away. Gufei's chanting was just a hoax, though. He had used Zhou Mu Si while chanting the spell, so his sword tip had pointed to over a dozen spots at once. As such, even the most experienced players among the crowd could not determine where the inferno would spring forth. The top-class mage, Drifting, could tell that the spell would not be unleashed with a sword dancing so wildly like that. During spell casting, A mage must point a hand or a staff to a fixed spot to unleash a spell. With how Gufei was waving his sword about as he chanted, Drifting was certain that the spell was a dud. Drifting was not the only one who could tell that Gufei's move was a bluff. Out of everyone in the bar, traversing 4 seas 3 men, the Black Hand mercenary group leader Black Index Finger, Silver Moon, Y City's Dusky Cloud and Company, and a few other guild leaders calmly remained on their seats. Besides them, the 4 Amethyst Rebirth ladies also remained unperturbed. They believed that their relationship with Gufei was strong enough for him to simply let them off the hook if one of them ever happened to be his bounty mission target. Chapter 202, a huge mess. Only a minority of the present players could see through Gufei's bluff, and a majority of them were completely taken in by his Joseon Musi. Feeling that Gufei had cast the spell on their very feet, the whole bar lost any semblance of order as many leaders scampered about to dodge the incoming spell. Just as Drifting was regarding the flustered leaders contemptuously, Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno flared into existence in the middle of the bar. The spell's AO only extended to the center of the bar, so the fleeing players were able to escape to the side unscathed. Only a handful of players got blasted by the spell, and they were mainly made up of those who had thought that they had seen through Gufei's wild gestures. These people included the number 1 mage Drifting, the 4 Amethyst Rebirth ladies, and the Black Hand mercenary group leader Black Index Finger. The 4 Amethyst Rebirth ladies freaked out for a bit, thinking that their death was unavoidable given Gufei's high spell damage. But when they unexpectedly remained relatively fine, they became very perplexed. As for Drifting, he was trying to figure out how the spell had successfully been cast despite Gufei's wild flailing of his sword, and he began to thoroughly inspect himself. The Black Hand mercenary group leader, for his part, promptly checked his HP and subsequently sneered, "You call this the insta-kill, mage?" They were not the only people who had gotten burned by the spell. When these other players heard Black Index Finger's words, they immediately checked their HP and were shocked. The damage they had received from this Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno was far lower than the damage output of a naked level 40 mage's spell. It was indeed too far-fetched to claim that Gufei could insta-kill someone based on the low spell damage he displayed just now. Insta-kill mage was how Brother Assist had promoted Gufei in his posts on the forums. Many of the present people had been drawn to this conference due to those 2 words. But now that they had experienced Gufei's spell damage for themselves, the surrounding players grew extremely agitated as they assumed that they had been scammed by Brother Assist. Calling him a liar, everyone demanded a refund up front. Some players even asked Brother Assist for a death match. The scene quickly descended into chaos. This was entirely outside Brother Assist's realm of calculation. Seeing so many people brandishing their swords, sabers, bows, and staves threateningly at him, Brother Assist hurriedly raised his hands to appease the crowd. "Please don't be so hasty, everyone. Let's calmly talk about this." "What's there to talk about?" someone bellowed. "We've already experienced what his spell is capable of. That's nowhere near enough to actually insta-kill someone at all." The men refused to be pacified. After all, they now had solid proof of the falsity of Brother Assist's claim after getting hit by Gufei's spell. As for those players who had escaped Gufei's Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno, they immediately asked the enraged men about Gufei's spell damage. In a matter of minutes, dissatisfaction spread throughout the crowd in the bar. Brother Assist was absolutely certain that Gufei's spell damage could insta-kill many people, but it was also irrefutable that the latter's recently released Blazing Tree of 1,000 Inferno had weak damage output. But as an acclaimed information expert, he was able to easily deduce what had just happened. While it was hard for weak players to suddenly get stronger in MMOs, it was actually very easy for the stronger players to slightly weaken their own attack power, and one of the way was through removing their weapons that greatly boosted their damage output. The troubled Brother Assist thought of this as he gazed at Gufei. Despite his face being covered, Gufei's twinkling eyes could clearly be seen. Brother Assist blanched as he exclaimed to himself, "Fuck, I got sabotaged." "Miles bro, don't mess around. You almost caused my death." Brother Assist hurriedly sent Gufei this private message. "The player you're trying to contact is temporarily unavailable," the system expressed. "Shit." He came prepared. Brother Assist almost coughed up blood. Covering his face, intentionally casting a weak spell, and even blocking any incoming messages. Gu Fei had clearly seen through Brother Assist's plan and had purposely messed things up for him. Brother Assist watched helplessly as the horde of leaders before him became more and more enraged. You are all leaders or influential figures in our city. How am I going to live peacefully in this city from here onward if this is truly an attempt to scam you all out of your money? Was what he had said previously to eliminate the doubts of everyone, and in the eyes of the others, it seemed that he had done just that at the moment. Guess I will have to abscond from this city. Brother Assist was in tears as this thought filled his head. Unexpectedly, someone stood up in his defense. Everyone, please hold your horses. The one who had spoken was young Master Han. But given the sort of people gathered in the bar today, young Master Han held no sway to them. Some arrogant leaders even pointed to him and yelled, "Just who do you think you are?" At the same time, Brother Assist received a private message from young Master Han. "I request to be given a bigger share of the pot if I manage to resolve your predicament." Taking advantage of me while I'm in trouble? They were both gaming experts after all, so their messaging speed was even faster than actual speech. Brother Assist might be lacking in other aspects as a player, but he was truly top-notch when it came to chatting, with his replying speed being faster than blink. Young Master Han did not respond to that. Instead, his eyes steadily made contact with Brother Assist's while smiling faintly. Brother Assist was clueless to young Master Han's plan, so he could only nod his head to the latter. Ahem! Young Master Han cleared his throat and raised his voice above the leader's din. "Hear me out first. What's there to explain?" The men demanded angrily. "Listen!" Young Master Han suddenly bellowed, "That man is absolutely not the insta-kill mage we want to introduce you guys to." The whole bar suddenly became quiet. Even Gu Fei looked at young Master Han in surprise. "Who is he, then?" Someone skeptically asked. "How do I know? I don't know him." "Perhaps, he's here to sabotage us." Young Master Han innocently replied. "This guy is really vicious and cunning." Brother Assist cried out in his heart. Basically, young Master Han was implying that someone was trying to sully Brother Assist's good name by making it seem that he had cheated the others of their money, and that someone was the unknown mage before them. Naturally, quite a few leaders would want to hold Gu Fei accountable for this ruckus. And once Gu Fei retaliated against his attackers, his true colors would get revealed and the matter would subsequently be resolved. After all, none of these leaders would still be angry at Brother Assist once they realized Gu Fei was truly capable of insta-killing the others. Right now, what was unknown was whose poor soul would get sacrificed to uncover this truth. Brother Assist sympathetically gazed at the crowd before him as he thought up to this point. It all boiled down to who among them was angrier at Gu Fei's earlier stunt. Young Master Han's plan was not complicated, so Brother Assist was not the only one who could figure it out. Gu Fei had also seen through his intention. In the end, he simply said to the two with a slight smile on his lips, "I won't attack even if I die." Young Master Han smiled faintly as well. "Then, go to hell." Young Master Han claimed that they were not acquainted with the masked man, yet now they were talking to each other. The people present were no fools, so they immediately questioned them. "You guys are supposed to not know each other, right?" "That's right. We don't know each other," young Master Han replied. "Then, what were you two talking about?" someone asked. "Your mom." Young Master Han answered. "What did you say?" The person bellowed in anger. "Weren't you asking us what we were talking about?" Young Master Han asked innocently. The person who had asked the question was left speechless. What happened next was even more outside of Brother Assist's expectation. Knowing that many of the present people were eager to beat Gu Fei up, Silver Moon, who had been maintaining silence all this while, suddenly said, "Everyone, please don't be rash. Let's just turn a blind eye over this weak mage who has suddenly barged in for now. He's all surrounded now, so there's no way for him to run. Anyway, don't forget, we didn't spend 100 gold coins today just to fight here, so I think it's better to get Brother Assist to invite this insta-kill mage out." He then looked at Brother Assist and the gang with eyes full of loathing and malice. Actually, from the way these event organizers greeted the weak mage just then, everyone could already tell that those people knew one another, and that the mage was probably the one that the gang had wanted to introduce to everyone. Who knew that things would come to this point where young Master Han would vehemently deny his connection with Gu Fei? Given the fast development of the situation, Hardly any people could connect the dots yet. Silvermoon coldly observed this proceeding, and unlike the others that had their focus shifting from person to person, his attention had remained on Gu Fei. Just from the verbal exchange between Gu Fei and young Master Han, Silvermoon more or less got the full picture of the situation and deduced that some sort of conflict must have transpired between the weak mage and the event organizers. With Gu Fei's refusal to admit that he was the insta-kill mage and young Master Han's denial of their connection, these few people in charge of the event would probably be branded as scammers and would swiftly be annihilated by all the leaders in Yangjuan City if they were unable to present the so-called insta-kill mage right at this moment, an outcome that Silvermoon would thoroughly relish. To think that the opportunity for revenge would come this soon, Silvermoon gleefully thought to himself as his mouth formed a sinister smile. Brother Assist noticed how Silvermoon had tried to calm down the enraged crowd earlier, and his heart tightened when he saw the latter smirking at a corner. Young Master Han had judged Silvermoon's character correctly. He was indeed a very shrewd person. He knew that young Master's elite was his arch nemesis, yet he never showed it in his action. Seeing a chance for revenge, he had pounced on it and viciously bit hard on it. This one bite was rather fatal. If they were unable to present the insta-kill mage to the crowd, they would be featured on the forums the next day as swindlers and their reputations would be ruined by this one incident. Right now, we could only hope that Miles would intervene, Brother Assist thought to himself, as he gazed imploringly at Gu Fei. Gu Fei had naturally caught on to Silvermoon's nasty plot. Although he had no wish to become a moneymaker for others, he could simply not allow such a villainous man to succeed. Finding a trade-off between the two, Gu Fei resolved to insta-kill Silvermoon with one move, even at the price of revealing his identity as the insta-kill mage. Everything else that followed could be discussed at a later period. Just as he was about to make his move, young Master Han spoke up once more. Even when he was in such a dire straits, young Master Han's tone remained measured and languid. Everyone, you've actually seen the insta-kill mage just now without realizing it. He is one of the 5 unyielding experts and Parallel World's #1 mage, drifting. Young Master Han said this emphatically as he pointed to the seated drifting who was calmly watching the proceeding. Oh! Brother Assist came to a sudden realization upon this reveal. It turned out that young Master Han's earlier words to Gu Fei were not a threat uttered out of anger but the truth instead. He judged that drifting was the perfect alternative candidate for the title of the insta-kill mage. Was drifting capable of insta-killing others, though? Although they had known him as one of the 5 unyielding experts, none of the present people had actually seen drifting in action. Given that there was not much difference in the levels of the current players, the ability to insta-kill others depended entirely on an individual's equipment and spell proficiency. Drifting happened to have a higher level than every person in the bar, so Brother Assist and the others could not appraise his equipment and make a judgment of his might as a mage. Meanwhile, Drifting, whose name was suddenly shoved to the limelight, dumbly gazed at young Master Han. Everyone once more descended into silence. Young Master Han did his best to give everyone an introduction. I'm sure that all of you are familiar with the name Drifting, since he has always been ranked first on the Mage leaderboard. But I believe that not many of you are aware that he is currently in Yangjuan City, right? To actually get to meet a living legend, you should all feel that the money you've paid is well worth it. Bullshit. He's nothing but a shitty mage. Royal Godcall was aware of their dire situation, yet the youth was ultimately more sensitive than sensible. He was utterly discontented to see his adversary being raised high up on the pedestal, so he shouted this without caring for the consequences. Young Master Han was unperturbed by Royal Godcall's outburst and merely addressed Ruthless Sword, guild leader Ruthless. You should grab this wild child of your guild and chastise him properly. This rascal has always been in conflict with Drifting. He knows very well that Drifting is in town, yet he never once saw it fit to inform you. The animosity between Royal Godcall and Drifting, the 2 renowned mage users in MMOs, was a well-documented fact known by many well-informed players. Everyone easily accepted young Master Han's words after seeing that Royal Godcall was indeed just a youngster. Everyone merely viewed Royal Godcall as a child throwing a tantrum even as the latter kept on shouting bullshit. The whole place once more returned to a state of tranquility as Brother Assist surveyed everything with incredulity. Is the situation really resolved just like that? Chapter 203, Mission accomplished. With the situation in the bar restored to a state of normality, all the leaders began to privately collect their thoughts. Many of them promptly tried adding drifting as a friend and expectedly received the "player drifting is currently not accepting any friend request" system prompt. Those who were sitting near drifting even started to strike a conversation with him. Of course, with how War Without Wounds had greeted Gufei earlier and how Gufei had exchanged furtive glances with Brother Assist, the others could not shake off the feeling that these people actually knew one another. Still, it was true that their payment of 100 gold coins was well worth it if they could get to know the number one mage in Parallel World, drifting. Now that the crowd had calmed down and recalled the purpose of their visit, they realized that the important thing to do now was to interact with drifting before anyone else had the chance to do so. All the other matters could take a back seat. Despite drifting becoming the focal point of this conference, he oddly remained unresponsive. Suddenly, he raised his hand with his 5 fingers upright and waved it toward young Master Han and Brother Assist, as if he was greeting them. Brother Assist was momentarily stunned by his action. It seemed that drifting was willing to act his part in this charade and was even reassuring them. What a great guy! Brother Assist felt immensely touched and he quickly waved his hand back at drifting. However, drifting completely ignored him. Next to Brother Assist, young Master Han raised his hand as well and waved it slightly, his 3 fingers at attention. Almost immediately, drifting retracted his thumb with only his 4 fingers remaining upright. In response, young Master Han retracted his ring finger and left his forefinger and middle finger upright. Drifting handily retracted 3 fingers, left just his forefinger up, and wagged it toward young Master Han before putting his hand down. All the players saw drifting waving his hand to greet the 2 event organizers, but none of them noticed young Master Han sneakily answering back. Only Brother Assist, who was right beside young Master Han, witnessed their whole exchange. When the 2 finished their finger gesturing, Brother Assist asked, "What was that all about?" Young Master Han began to explain. He asked for 5,000 gold coins, and I rebutted with 3,000 gold coins. Brother Assist began to piece everything together. So when he asked for 4,000 gold coins, you gave him the price of 2,000 gold coins. Young Master Han nodded his head. Then, he voluntarily dropped his price to only 1,000 gold coins? Brother Assist could not understand this part. That finger movement means that we will discuss this matter after this, young Master Han corrected. Do you guys know each other? Brother Assist asked. It was hard to imagine 2 perfect strangers being able to successfully communicate with each other using their fingers alone. No, we don't. This is just a matter of IQ, young Master Han said matter-of-factly, leaving Brother Assist quite dejected. After all their finger gesturing, drifting was now gamely playing his role. He even took the initiative to stand up before anyone could discern the true nature of his relationship with young Master's elite and address the crowd. This is my first time in Yunjuan City, so I hope that everyone here will take good care of me from here onward. Of course, that is to be expected. All the leaders eagerly agreed to his request. Everyone present was rather prominent in Yunjuan City, but that was still nothing compared to drifting, whose name was well known throughout Parallel World. If an unknown player was the insta-kill mage, all these leaders could still dream of successfully headhunting him. But since the insta-kill mage turned out to be such a huge character, at least half of them understood that their chances of recruiting drifting were slim and nearly zero. Only Oathless Sword, the guild leader of Traversing 4 Seas, which was the largest guild in Yunjuan City, was extremely happy at this turn of events. He believed that out of all the leaders present in the conference, he had the best chance at recruiting drifting. As an experienced gamer that was often in the limelight, drifting was able to easily handle the attention of all these influential figures and to casually socialize with them. But despite drifting's excellent social skills, mingling with everyone was still not possible for him, and this resulted into quite a few people being left high and dry. All the present leaders were distinguished by their own right, so none of them could stand being disregarded by anyone, even someone as popular as drifting. These people were of course feeling unhappy at having spent 100 gold coins without managing to acquaint themselves with the number one mage, but they were not so unreasonable that they would blame this outcome on young Master's elite. But Silver Moon could see just how frustrating they were feeling inside. and he was currently scheming on causing everyone to get mad at young Masters Elite once more. Silver Moon had attempted to sabotage the meet and greet event by getting everyone to view young Masters Elite as a common enemy earlier, and in the end it was the many leaders who were treating one another as enemies instead, since they were all competing to get close to drifting. When his plan had fallen through, Silver Moon had gone back to quietly observing the situation. Seeing the few disregarded leaders desire to vent their frustration on someone, he knew that he had found another opportunity to create trouble for young Masters Elite and hurriedly cleared his throat. Ahem. I say, there's no doubt that drifting is the number one mage. Number one, my foot. Royal Godcall indignantly interjected. MHM. I know that Royal Bro was also very glorious back then. Silver Moon threw a half-hearted flattery at Royal Godcall. He tried to divert everyone's attention from drifting by pointing directly at Goofy and saying, I don't know what this guy's intentions are, but he was making a scene just now by claiming to do a bounty mission. Somehow, I got the feeling that he is well acquainted with you all based on the interactions you lot were having just now. The way Goofy suddenly barged into the bar and how the rest of young Masters Elite greeted him earlier were very suspicious, and Silver Moon kindly reminded the dissatisfied leaders of this fact, so that they could have a valid reason to vent their built-up resentment toward these few event organizers. Given that a few of the present leaders had pretty terrible personalities to begin with, Silver Moon easily succeeded at enticing them. They immediately latched onto his words and once more pointed accusing fingers at Brother Assist and friends. That's right. We demand an explanation for this matter. Just what is going on here? That mage clearly talked to you guys when he came in, so how come you all claim to not know who he is? Brother Assist did not know how to answer the person's question, and it was the expressionless young Master Han who replied, when did talking equate to knowing each other? You're talking to me right now, but do you know who I am? The person was briefly taken aback by this statement. Since the man he had instigated proved to be a weak hand, the clever Silver Moon felt the need to give him a helping hand. Don't play word games with us, do you think we're stupid? Young Master Han merely snorted at his words, showing a defiant look on his face. Silver Moon was glad that young Master Han was so intransigent. At this rate, the situation would reach a point where words would be meaningless and a fight would break out, which was exactly what Silver Moon was hoping for. Thus, he became more fervent at inciting the crowd. If you don't explain this matter properly, we would not be convinced that we have spent 100 gold coins appropriately. The leaders who had been unable to talk with drifting nodded their heads maliciously as they stared at young Master Han and the gang with malevolent eyes. Goofy, who had been staying quiet all this while, finally said, I don't know what you guys are yapping about, but haven't I told you all already? I'm here on a bounty mission. Oh, yeah? Who is your bounty target, then? Silver Moon challenged. Since he was aware of Goofy's identity and had been observing the latter all this while, Silver Moon figured that the matter at hand was not as simple as it seemed. However, Silver Moon made a miscalculation. He wanted to use the misunderstanding to start a huge fight that could not be resolved by mere words. While he correctly judged that young Masters Elite was on the weak side when matched up against these influential leaders, he did not account for Goofy being bold enough to make the first move. Goofy already disliked Silver Moon, and now that the latter was trying to incite everyone present into fighting, he was more than happy to start a fight on the spot. When Silver Moon gleefully inquired about his bounty target, Goofy simply answered, you. He then stepped onto a bench and leapt over the table, slashing the sword in his hand across Silver Moon's face. Twin incineration. Incinerate. Goofy chanted, causing even the leaders chatting with drifting to turn their heads over and look. All they saw was a fiery slash enveloping a dark shadow before brushing past Silver Moon's face. This one stroke of Goofy was truly vicious. Although Silver Moon did not get insta-killed, a straight cut was left across his face. Goofy gave it a look as he sighed, the bottom part is a bit crooked. Looks like my hand isn't steady enough. Sigh. Seems like the weight of this sword isn't very handy. Silver Moon was so shocked that he pointed at Goofy and repeatedly said, you. What he wanted to say was, how dare you strike at me just like that? But since Goofy had already executed his move, What was the point of saying that? This was what the adage when a scholar meets a soldier meant. Silvermoon was a scholar who was using his gift of the gab to breed discord among the people, yet his chance encounter with the soldier Gufei who merely used brute strength to resolve any issue became his downfall. Silvermoon did not get insta-killed by Gufei as his equipment provided him with high magic defense, but the attack was still powerful enough to drop his HP into the red. Thankfully, his two companions quickly flanked his sides. Although they reacted half a beat slower to Gufei, the two readily slashed at Gufei's face to give it a cut of their own. Bounty mission. Please leave if you're not involved. Gufei shouted this as he retreated to dodge the two's incoming attacks. The two men were of course not frightened off by Gufei's words and even positioned themselves right before Silvermoon to protect him. Silvermoon knew that this was useless, as Gufei had another fearsome skill in hand. Knowing that he was no match for the deadly Gufei even with his two companions, he immediately bolted toward the bar entrance as he continued to provoke Gufei. What are you doing? Are you trying to silence me? Silvermoon was trying to incite the present leaders into aiding him. But even though he had spoken these words quickly, Gufei's words were still faster. Translocation, blank. By the time Silvermoon finished his words, Gufei had already teleported himself right before Silvermoon. The blurry image of a moving sword and a fiery glow streaking through the air killed Silvermoon there and then. Mission accomplished! Gufei exclaimed in satisfaction, as the entire bar descended into silence once more. Chapter 204, A Lingering Spirit. What was called the sound of silence? Right now, that was what one could hear inside Ray's bar. It was so quiet that anyone would hear it if a pin dropped. Everyone was in awe at the way Gufei finished off Silvermoon just now. Twin Incineration was a spell that mages seldom used, so most mages had low proficiency in it. Therefore, they considered Twin Incineration as the least lethal of all the spells in their arsenal. The other job classes knew of this as well. And yet, Gufei had just defeated a knight with what everyone judged as the weakest mage spell. To be able to finish off a knight by just casting Twin Incineration twice. This was by no means a small feat, and everyone began to think of how fearsome Gufei's spell damage was. Ironically, nobody realized that Silvermoon had high resistance against magic, and that Gufei could actually insta-kill any regular players by just casting his spell once. A Twin Incineration spell that Gufei incorporated into his swordplay moves was very different from a Twin Incineration spell that was cast by regular mages. After all, compared to his use of blank, these knowledgeable leaders viewed his use of Twin Incineration as more noteworthy. People merely chalked it up to a person luckily obtaining a skill scroll if anyone happened to possess blink right now. And although getting a hold of Blink was not easy at this point of the game, Blink's lack of any offensive properties made people undervalue it. Gufei's connection with Brother Assist and Company, his real purpose for coming in the bar, and his disruption of the meet and greet event. None of these mattered anymore, and at this moment, the leaders, especially those who had not managed to speak with Drifting, only wanted to get close to Gufei to try recruiting him over. So they began gravitating toward him. Although Drifting was renowned, none of them knew of just how powerful he was. Small and medium guilds and mercenaries would not even dream of having someone like him as a member, and only large guilds and mercenaries would think of inviting him just to have his name be associated with their organizations. Moreover, there was even a possibility of such players to turn into a leader from being a subordinate. As such, these leaders were keener on acquiring and nurturing a rising star like Gufei. As they were thinking of this, Gufei, who no longer had any business in Ray's bar, sprinted out of it. Hey, bro, wait up. Many of them tried to chase after him, as they judged that they had a higher chance of recruiting the nameless expert than the famous individual Drifting. As for the others, they got torn between getting to know Drifting and chasing after Gufei for quite a while before finally resolving to pursue Gufei. Eventually, they all returned to the establishment in disappointment. Just who exactly is that guy? Everyone began to wonder. He is so fast. He must have added a lot of points to agility, someone said. I tried to appraise his gear before, yet I failed to get a read of his robe and sword. His sword and robe must be top grade, and they are probably the source of his high spell damage, a leader accurately deduced. Wait a minute. With such a high spell damage, how come the damage of his blazing 3 of 1,000 Inferno is so low? Someone posed this question. In the blink of an eye, Only a minority of the leaders in Ray's bar continued to converse with Drifting, and a majority of them heatedly discussed the enigma that was Gufei. Young Master Han used this moment to send Brother Assist a private message: "Let's leave now." Brother Assist wholeheartedly agreed to this. War Without Wounds, who had been standing by the entrance, easily slipped away from the bar. As for Royal God Call, he was also able to leave the place unrestricted as no one was keeping tab on him, and he even managed to spit twice in Drifting's general direction without anybody noticing it. But when it was young Master Han and Brother Assist's turn to leave, many leaders immediately took note of it. "You two, don't leave just yet," someone shouted, and everyone turned to look at the two. Young Master Han smiled. "Our business here is done. Everyone, please have a nice chat with Mr. Drifting." "Wait." Several leaders jumped out and blocked the two's way out. "We still want you two to tell us more about the Mage just then. We don't know that guy," young Master Han maintained. "Don't humor us as if we are children. None of us here thinks that you guys don't know one another." Their discussion of Gufei covered every detail from his first appearance to the bar until his departure, and it was very obvious that he was familiar with Brother Assist and the others based on their interaction. Everyone was busy trying to get to know Drifting just now, so they had chose to put the matter of Gufei aside, but now that they learned about Gufei's indomitable fighting prowess, these people who now had their eyes on him would naturally not let him get away so easily. Once more, the situation went a little out of control. Brother Assist smiled helplessly as he tried hard to explain themselves to everyone. Meanwhile, young Master Han was silently observing the surrounding people while standing beside Brother Assist, and he had noticed something odd. While this group of leaders was anxiously trying to find out any information about Gufei from Brother Assist, there were two men who did not join in. Those two were instead focusing on portraying young Master's elite in a bad light by reminding everyone on how sketchy the whole thing was from the start. These two men were Silver Moon's companions, which caused young Master Han to utter "Oh no." In his mind. Could it be that Silver Moon has purposefully goaded Miles into attacking him to expose the latter's fighting prowess and create this situation, afterward? This must be his real objective from the start. Man, that guy is truly a lingering spirit that just won't rest. Young Master Han seemed to have a tendency to overanalyze Silver Moon's scheme, whether it was during the guild war in Y City, or during their recent clash in the mercenary group tournament, and this time was no exception. It was understandable, as he did not actually know Silver Moon that well. Was Silver Moon a guy who would readily sacrifice himself just to get revenge? Of course not. But besides that, young Master Han's judgment was spot on. Silver Moon's death was indeed what had caused the chaotic situation right now. Over by a spawn point, Silver Moon was cursing Gufei and all the 18 generations of his ancestors and descendants when he suddenly received a live feed of the situation at Ray's bar from his two companions. Realizing that his death had indirectly exposed Gufei's impressive spell damage, he became elated and resolved to not let this opportunity slip. With all the leaders turning their attention to Gufei and the rest of young Master's elite, Silver Moon hurriedly ordered his two companions to try their best to instigate a fight. Remember, this is not about forcing them to reveal information about Thousand Miles Drunk. The most wonderful outcome we can hope for is for the present leaders to realize that the entire thing is nothing but an elaborate scam. Only when one side yearns to find out and another side refuses to share information can it eventually escalate into a fight. So what you guys must do is emphasize the inexplicable actions that Thousand Miles Drunk has done, as well as the lies that the group has said just now. The two listened intently at Silver Moon's instructions. It was precisely because they wanted to plant suspicion into the leaders' minds about this whole matter that the two had animatedly participated in the discussion about Gufei before. While everyone was surrounding young Master Han and Brother Assist to ask them about the Mage Gufei, the two men kept on spouting accusing words from the sidelines. Their words fueled everyone's suspicion further until it reached the point where the leaders directly demanded for young Master's elite to promptly hand over Gufei so that they could hold him accountable over the matter. What they must request is something that neither Brother Assist nor young Master Han can fulfill. It's the best case scenario for us. Only such a contradiction between expectations can create an impasse between the two sides. At least, my death won't be in vain that way, was what Silver Moon told the two men. It's a success. One of Silvermoon's two companions excitedly reported, "They are now demanding for Brother Assist to immediately hand over 1,000 miles drunk to give them an account of the matter. I doubt that they can do that now." Indeed, they seem to have some sort of misunderstanding among themselves. Miles must have really come to mess things up for them just then. He must have some reservations regarding this money-making scheme that his friends had cooked up. I don't know what's up with them, but it thankfully let us get to this point. Sit back and watch the show now. Right now, Silvermoon felt that losing a level was no longer that tragic. "Where's that mage? Quickly call him back. Don't say all that nonsense about you guys not knowing him. You're not fooling anyone here." All the leaders were currently pointing and yelling at Brother Assist and young Master Han. The not acquainted reasoning that they had given could no longer be used. This originally harmless white lie had suddenly grown teeth and came back to bite them. They had truly dug their own graves this time. As for the crowd's demand of calling the mage back, it was indeed something that Brother Assist and company could not do. This was entirely because Gufei had not replied to any of their messages. Brother Assist no longer had any ideas left and he sweated profusely from anxiety. Young Master Han, meanwhile, seemed to not care in the least bit to quarrel with these people. Besides those few words he had said earlier when these people had blocked their way, he had actually not said another word after. His eyes flickered unevenly, and none could tell what he was thinking about. "Are you guys calling him or not? Don't think we didn't notice that mage is the one you guys were planning to introduce to us. It just happened that Drifting Bro is here, so you besieged an expert like him at the very last minute for help. Are you lot trying to hide that mage of yours to find another opportunity to profit from us again?" Young Master Han's hastily made up plan to drag Drifting down with them was too flimsy a save. Adding the fact that the leaders had Silvermoon's insiders inciting them from behind, many of them had now seen through this whole charade. The situation was now a step closer to what Silvermoon had hoped for, with everyone treating this whole affair as a scam. If young Master's elite only cheated one player of his or her 100 gold coins, perhaps they would just receive a few verbal curses as the player would not bother to rally a force against them for such a measly sum. But with many of them gathered together, the leaders, who really thought that they had been scammed, ended up encouraging one another to hunt down the perpetrators. "What do we do now?" Brother Assist saw that young Master Han had not spoken a word, so he quickly sent him a private message. "Don't worry, someone will stand up and speak for us," young Master Han calmly replied. "Who?" Brother Assist asked as he swept his gaze over the crowd before them. "These leaders are trying to learn more information about Miles with the intention of poaching him. Think about it, who would be opposed to that kind of goal?" Young Master Han asked Brother Assist. "Oh." Brother Assist got what he meant and his gaze shifted toward the relatively more tranquil side of the bar. Still seated over there were the four ladies of Amethyst Rebirth. Chapter 205. The situation inside and outside. The goal of players for establishing guilds was mainly to dominate the land and their subjects, while the aim of players for creating mercenary groups was to obtain rewards by doing various types of quests and missions. Between these two types of organizations, one strove for dominance while another was just after the benefits. From this perspective, one could say that the jostling between guilds was similar to the struggle between two nations, while the competition between mercenary groups was just limited to two gaming workshops duking it out. Whatever the case might be, talent would always be the ultimate source of strength for these organizations. But when it came down to it, guilds thirsted more for the existence of talented individuals. After all, their ultimate aim was similar to establishing a dynasty that could unify all of Jianghu. As such, the attendees of the insta-kill mages meet and greet were mainly consisted of guild leaders. Currently, this bunch of guild leaders was glaring with arched eyebrows at young Master Han and Brother Assist, demanding for them to call Gufei back. Evidently, they were looking to draw him over to their own guilds. A guild poaching another guild's member was a common occurrence in online games, but it was at the very least not done right in front of the other guild leader's face, as that would just be too high-handed and disrespectful. And even if the poaching was successful and everything was revealed afterward, a guild leader must still maintain a certain level of tact and discretion regarding his or her poaching activity to show the appropriate respect over to a fellow guild leader. At this time, all these guild leaders were openly expressing their intentions to poach Gufei, not knowing that he was already spoken for and that his guild leader was even sharing the very same space with them. Young Master Han had been quietly observing things all this while with a pair of emotionless eyes, simply waiting for the ladies to speak up. Indeed, the ladies could no longer bear to watch these guild leaders openly poach their fellow guildmate. While July and Luo calmly lowered their heads to discuss the best course of action, Lion's felt dancer impatiently leapt from their seats and said aloud, "You guys are too much. That mage belongs to our guild. Are you ignoring our existence as you poach him?" The entire bar abruptly descended into an uncomfortable silence. These guild leaders were not Sakura so they would not turn meek at the sight of a few ladies. Their sudden silence was due to the underlying meaning of the ladies' words. They were poaching a member right before the guild leader. Poaching someone else's member was considered as a taboo in any game, and all these guild leaders were clear of this unspoken rule for acquiring talent. Hearing that Gu Fei's guild leader was actually in this conference, these guild leaders were momentarily at a loss on their next step. Besides that, a sudden thought flashed through their minds. How did a small guild like Amethyst Rebirth manage to beat the large guilds of Carouse and Cloudherder? Furthermore, Carouse and Cloudherder had conducted their city-wide advertisement in search of a particular mage after their defeat at the hands of Amethyst Rebirth. At this moment, these leaders finally knew the reason behind all those puzzling events. Amethyst Rebirth had a hidden expert in it, and Carouse and Cloudherder became aware of his existence after clashing with the guild during the PvP tournament, so they conducted a city-wide search to find the mage. In short, the insta-kill mage was a member of Amethyst Rebirth. All the leaders were speechless and no longer pressed young Master Han and Brother Assist for information about the mage. Brother Assist heaved a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off of his forehead, yet young Master Han, who was beside him, actually kept his eyes trained on the two claws of Silver Moon. He would love to see if they had any moves left after this unexpected resolution of the situation. At this same moment, the two men were relaying everything that they were witnessing at Ray's bar to Silver Moon, who was currently walking down a street. When Silver Moon received this piece of news, he felt quite shocked. He knew that Gu Fei was a member of a mercenary group, but he had no idea at all that the latter was also a member of a guild. With the presence of the people from his guild, it would truly be difficult for the other leaders to pursue the matter further. However, this also meant that the guild leaders would feel even more dissatisfied with how the matter had unfolded. There was even a possibility of them directly venting their gradually escalating frustration onto young Master's elite. Would that not be amazing? Silver Moon was happily keying in his reply when he suddenly heard someone from behind him shout, "He's over here." He continued to compose a message even as he reflexively turned to look at the voice's origin, just in time to see an arrow fly toward him and embed itself into his forehead. Silver Moon staggered backward from the sheer force behind the arrow. His eyes darted to where the attack had come from and saw Warrior Without Wounds marching toward him. Royal God Call, who was pulling his bowstring with a knocked arrow on it, was right behind Warrior Without Wounds. "Brat, you're pretty ruthless," War Without Wounds said to Royal God Call as he flourished the claymores in his hands. Silver Moon knew that he was no match for him, so he turned to flee, yet War Without Wounds was already prepared for this and activated his charge to rush toward him. Warriors had slow speed, but that would change whenever they were using the charge skill. Having expected Silver Moon to turn tail and run, the veteran expert War Without Wounds had timely activated his charge skill and flawlessly hit Silver Moon's butt cheeks with his claymores. That thrust from the claymore propelled Silver Moon straight towards a nearby wall. "Ah!" Royal God Call yelped for Silver Moon. His face was scrunched up, and he dared not to look, but his eyes showed more glee than sympathy. By the time he finished yelping, Silver Moon had already crashed into a nearby wall. "You did that on purpose!" Royal God Call exclaimed as he approached War Without Wounds. Silver Moon was crumpled up against the wall. He felt lightheaded, and it was not due him being inflicted with the dizzy effect of charge but due to him bodily slamming into a wall. He shook his head to clear his thoughts when the ground before him darkened as the large frame of War Without Wounds blocked off the sun's warm glow. "What are you guys doing?" Silver Moon asked. "Fucker, you were messing things up in the background and you dared to ask what we are doing?" War Without Wounds replied with a question. "Rough him up!" Royal God Call merrily cried out. "Yeah." War Without Wounds agreed, as he stooped over and lifted Silver Moon up. With a slap of his arm, Silver Moon found himself slamming against the wall again. Although the damage dealt to him was insignificant, the damage the blow had inflicted on his soul could not be expressed by mere numbers. The two were not done yet. Royal God Call took this chance to let loose an arrow, landing it right onto Silver Moon's chest. Silver Moon did not die from that, though, and merely slid down the wall. Royal God Call regretfully commented, "What a pity. It would be great if I could pin you against the wall." "Ah, should we tie him up and hang him up the clock tower?" War Without Wounds suggested. "That's a great idea." Royal God Call was all for it. "Shall we go, then?" War Without Wounds asked as he picked Silver Moon up. "Yes, let's go." Royal God Call excitedly answered as he took his time to savor Silver Moon's miserable expression. Silver Moon gritted his teeth, not making a sound. "Hey, you rascal! Are you looking for people to save you from the clock tower?" "Ha ha ha! Actually, we were lying about that." War Without Wounds arm whirled when he said that, and Silver Moon slammed into the wall for the third time. "That's right. Why would we waste our time and effort on you?" "Oi, are you already dead?" Seeing that Silver Moon was not moving, Royal God Call prodded him with an arrow. Suddenly, the prone Silver Moon did a forward slash at him. But since he did not possess Goofy's speed, his surprise attack was not particularly fast. Although Royal God Call was able to dodge his point-blank strike, the suddenness of the attack made him break out in cold sweat. "How despicable! Let's finish him off now." Royal God Call took 2 steps backward and said this to War Without Wounds. War Without Wounds nodded his head. "We really should rush things a little." With that, he stepped forward and brought his 2 claymores down on Silver Moon. Silver Moon lifted his king's blade to block it, but War Without Wounds changed his downward cleave into a horizontal cut from both sides. This is the beauty of dual wielding. Silver Moon felt helpless regarding his situation. A wall was blocking his path of retreat, and with attacks coming from his left and right, he was only able to block one side and was forced to take the other slash of War Without Wounds. "Man, this guy's really tenacious. He's still not dead even after all that." Royal God Call exclaimed as he knocked an arrow to give War Without Wounds a helping hand. Given his non-combat job class, Silver Moon was not able to respond properly to the two's concerted attacks. Moreover, any form of resistance from him was easily stifled by the 2 experts. Silver Moon wanted to raise his stats using King's Command, but Royal God Call and War Without Wounds' overwhelming attacks prevented him from even granting any Knight's Blessing on himself. In the end, he unwillingly succumbed to death. Royal God Call looked at the time and glanced over to War Without Wounds. "Do you think Sword Demon will feel impatient waiting over by his side?" "Best to tell him." War Without Wounds then sent Sword Demon a message. "Think he can do it by himself?" Royal God Call asked. "There shan't be a problem with his stealth. Not everyone is like Miles who can detect a thief on stealth, you know?" War Without Wounds replied. "God damn it, Miles has yet to remove his message restriction." Royal God Call cursed. "Silver Moon's pretty lucky. If Miles knew about us hunting him, he would surely be dropped by Miles all the way down to level 30. War Without Wounds sighed. "Do you know how things are at Ray's bar?" Royal God Call asked. "No idea. Young Master Han said he doesn't need our help, so I guess everything is fine." War Without Wounds replied. "How wonderful would it be if those leaders killed off young Master?" Royal God Call yearned. War Without Wounds nodded his head. "I hope Brother Assist doesn't die. He has all the coins, so he better not die and drop them." "Should we go take a look?" Royal God Call suggested. "Let's." The big and small figures of the 2 headed back to Ray's bar, only leaving behind the signs of their pulverization of Silver Moon as well as the dumbfounded onlookers. Over by Ray's bar, Silver Moon's 2 companions had yet to receive a reply after sending out their reports, so they could only rack their brains for any possible solutions. Since Silver Moon was the brain of their team, the 2 could not quickly come up with any ideas. While Silver Moon was aware that the presence of Goofy's guildmates only made it easier for them to create conflict between the leaders and young Master's elite, the 2 did not analyze this matter deeply enough and were unable to come to the same conclusion that he did. The 2, for their part, thought that the presence of the Amethyst Rebirth ladies was preventing them from developing the situation to their desired result. Thinking that it would be best if they were not there, one of the 2 men cried out, "Since that's the case, can you ladies just leave? Don't hinder us in our business." They did not say this without a basis. With the small size of Amethyst Rebirth, the two judged that the guild would be unable to do anything even if the many guild leaders tried to poach their member openly. Hearing the man's words, young Master Han burst into a suppressed laughter and turned to Brother Assist. These guys are fucking morons. Are they trying to court death? Following this, Svelte Dancer indignantly bellowed, "What did you just say?" Shin then activated Fleetfoot, darted toward the man who had spoken, extended her dagger in hand in one swift motion, and finished off the rascal. Chapter 206, Does It Ever End? After insta-killing the man with one stroke, Svelte Dancer retreated to her original position. Her ghostly attack wowed all the leaders in the establishment as they had never seen something like it before. What was more, Svelte Dancer's one attack was clearly not backed by a skill but was merely her inherent attack power. This left the leaders tongue-tied and made them question themselves. Had they been the recipient of Svelte Dancer's attack, would they have been able to dodge it? And if they could not, would they be able to withstand that one blow? Each of their faces paled when they thought up to that, and they all came to one conclusion: too fast. There's no way anyone could dodge that. When she was back into her original position, Svelte Dancer asked aloud, spouting nonsense. "Do you lot even know the rules?" She then carefully wiped her dagger clean as her eyes swept through the crowd of guild leaders, as if she was looking for her next target. The remaining man of Silver Moon at Ray's bar did not even dare to make a peep. However, just because he had stopped speaking did not mean that others would let him do so. Young Master Han had an expression of taking joy in calamity and delight in disaster as he pointed the man out. "That friend over there, didn't you have something to say?" "Nope, none at all." The man quickly denied. "Really? You were so talkative moments ago." Young Master Han continued to say. The last man looked at Svelte Dancer quickly. Feeling her eyes on him, he nearly peed his pants as he mumbled, "I really have nothing else to say." This was what a guilty person would say, otherwise, a person would not be so nervous. It was the man's fearful expression that further deepened the shadows in the leaders' hearts and they no longer dared to speak arbitrarily. Young Master Han did his best to stifle his laughter. Just as he was preparing to say something that would give the leaders an out for today's matter, the bar's door was suddenly pushed open from the outside and a man walked in. Why are you lot still here?" the person exclaimed while looking at the congregation. Young Master Han looked at the newcomer and almost coughed up blood. Miles. Gu Fei had the worst possible timing to return to the bar. If this dragged on and on, when would the matter ever end? "What are you doing here?" Young Master Han's face was black from barely suppressed ire. "Bounty mission, it's for real this time, though," Gu Fei answered. "Oh." All the leaders happily exhaled as realization dawned on them. Had Gu Fei not said that, none of them would have recognized him. After all, Gu Fei's face was covered the last time he had been in the bar. Without it, none of them associated him to the mage from before. Mages wearing black robes were a dime a dozen in Yunjuan City, and in fact, the newest attire available for level 40 dark priests was colored black. Moreover, differentiating between mages and priests was difficult without scrutiny. Would anyone use appraisal on every random person who entered a tavern just to determine his or her job class? Once Gu Fei uttered bounty mission, everyone immediately knew who he was. They were even more certain of his identity when he took out Moonlit Nightfalls from his dimensional pocket. With guild leader July calmly staring at them, all the guild leaders could do nothing but blush at Gu Fei's sudden reappearance. It was Gu Fei who took the initiative by slowly walking toward them. Unlike his earlier arrogant demeanor, he was currently giving off an apologetic vibe as he courteously said to the leaders, "Please let me through, I'm on a bounty mission." The few leaders awakened from their daydream and quickly stepped aside. One of the more quick-witted leaders even helpfully asked, "Who are you looking for?" "Want me to help you?" The person's question held a lot of weight behind it. After all, many of the people currently inside the bar were influential individuals by their own right. For two leaders to clash with each other, it would very likely escalate into a guild war. Thus, it could be seen how much importance the person had placed to attracting the talent Gu Fei. To compete for Gu Fei's attention, he did hesitate to start an altercation with others. If an altercation did start because of him, Gu Fei would surely be compelled to lend a helping hand, and it was clear which side he would aid at that time. Once Gu Fei was forced to choose a side, Whatever happened afterward would just create many chances for the guild to entice him in. While this scheme might seem moronic, it was actually a very sophisticated psychological attack. It was just a pity that this person had no understanding of where Gufei's interest lay. He was doing bounty mission to have a valid reason to slay people, so why would Gufei let others take his target? After rejecting the offer, Gufei immediately pointed to someone in the crowd with his sword and said, "It's you. The rest of you, please make way." Scrambling to make a good impression to Gufei, all the leaders hurriedly moved to either side for him in a way that resembled the parting of the Red Sea. Gufei's target was a distinguished guild leader, yet the person was currently not feeling very distinguished. Gufei had singled him out and was now rushing to him. No matter how much he wanted to ingratiate himself to Gufei, there was simply no way he would willingly expose his neck to the ladder for him to chop off. Right now, the guild leader could not stomach Gufei's self-assured attitude. "At the end of the day, you're just a mage. Guess I'll just have to see how up you are," was what the person thought to himself. With a wave of his hand, he brought out his claymore. The man was a warrior. Applying the basic logic of online games for this fight, the two's proximity to each other was clearly fatal to the mage, a job class that was at a disadvantage in melee, and the limited space the tavern provided was also helpful to a warrior, making it that much easier for him to force this melee. Unfortunately for the warrior, Gufei was an existence that defied logic. Yi Xiaoyu was so hung up over Gufei precisely because the latter was a walking anomaly in game. If Gufei had chosen to be a warrior, fighter, or any melee job class and proceeded to use his kung fu, Yi Xiaoyu would not have paid much attention to him. But since Gufei had a mage job class, his use of kung fu in close combat had changed the way his job class would normally be in-game. This was why Yi Xiaoyu had regarded Gufei as an existence that could break the balance of parallel world. The warrior knew that the damage of Gufei's twin incineration was high. With Gufei closing in on him, the warrior deduced that he was planning to cast that spell and decided to take the initiative in attacking Gufei. No matter how high a mage's spell damage was, his or her defense would always be low. It would be hard for the mage to cast his spell if he took the offensive, right? The deduction of this leader was rather clever. When Gufei stepped within 2 meters of him, the leader quickly ducked his head and activated charge. "Ah!" someone among the crowd of spectators exclaimed, subconsciously worrying for Gufei's safety. At the same time, the other leaders sighed as they assumed that the mage had limited experience regarding clashes like this since he did not take precaution against the warrior's charge. EHHH? In the next moment, however, everyone exclaimed in disbelief. Seeing the warrior lower his head, Gufei easily figured out his next move and foresaw various possible scenarios for it. What happened after was exactly as he had expected. Gufei sidestepped to dodge the attack and the charging warrior brushed past him. With a quick incantation, Gufei cleaved his sword down the warrior's back. Who knew how many times he had crossed weapons with warriors and experienced charge before? He truly felt sorry for these players. Engaging in a PvP in such a formulaic manner, all the warriors' fighting techniques seemed to have been cut from the same cloth. Naturally, that resulted into Gufei employing the same PvP maneuver to subdue them again and again. He only had to sidestep to dodge their attack and follow it up with Hui Feng Luo Yen. Since this move always worked perfectly in every instance, Gufei felt very lonely. He was like Dukuku by one. How he wished to encounter a warrior that could avoid this technique of his, but he sadly had yet to encounter such a warrior. At this moment, the warrior's back went ablaze as he continued to charge ahead. It was extremely eye-catching to the others around him due to the fact that twin incineration would apply to its victim the burn effect for a few seconds. As the warrior finally finished his forward charge, the flames on his back continued to dance merrily without any signs of extinguishing. Gufei rarely saw such a scene as 80% of his targets would promptly disappear after receiving his slash powered by twin incineration. None could survive the burn effect of his spell as well. "You're a guild leader alright. You're quite tough," Gufei commended the warrior internally. Closing in on the warrior with 2 steps, he was about to plunge his sword onward when the warrior was swathed in a white light and disappeared. "Sword chi?" someone exclaimed. "Sword your fucking chi. It's the burn effect of twin incineration," someone immediately ridiculed. Gufei disappointingly kept his sword. He totally did not expect the warrior to survive the initial blow of his twin incineration, only to be done in by the spell's burn effect. Mission accomplished. Gufei announced. He was about to activate the teleportation function of his Windchaser's emblem when he noticed young Master Han throwing him a look. Just say what you wanna say, stop giving me eye signal. I'm not Sword Demon, so I don't understand it, Gufei said. Fucking remove your message restriction, then. Young Master Han exclaimed, enraged. Oh, I completely forgot. Gufei quickly readjusted the message setting of his gaming account and immediately received young Master Han's message, kill that guy. Gufei looked to where young Master Han was pointing his hand and spotted a certain man in the crowd. Why? Gufei asked him. To protect the peace, young Master Han curtly answered. Gufei looked over at the man who was presumably undermining the peace. When their eyes met, the man's eyes immediately darted away as nerves overcame him, the very act of someone feeling guilty. At the same time, Gufei recognized him as one of the two men that Silver Moon had brought in the conference and promptly added two and two together. To indiscriminately kill a man in front of so many people, the repercussions would surely not be good. Gufei pondered on how to do the deed without angering the others and then activated Blink to appear right before the man. The person squeaked in surprise and retreated a few steps from Gufei, causing him to step onto something. By the time the person lowered his head to look, Gufei had already coldly remarked, "Bro, you've stepped on my foot." It was unknown when Gufei had placed his foot right in the man's path of retreat, but it was obvious that he had intentionally done it so that the latter would step on his foot. The man was about to explain himself, but Gufei did not give him a chance to do so. Pulling out his sword, he slew the man right there and then. Chapter 207, PvP in a VR setting. Killing off a man just because his foot had been stepped on. Such a far-fetched yet tyrannical reason was not very convincing to others. The quick-witted players at Raise Bar could naturally tell that Gufei was just looking for a reason to eliminate the man. Furthermore, Gufei's current execution of his moves was far more vicious than his execution of them before. With his attack connecting to the target better and Silver Moon's lackey being weaker than the guild leader moments ago, Gufei managed to finish the man off with that one strike powered by twin incineration. How domineering! All the leaders exclaimed in unison. Still, they could not fathom Gufei's reason for slaying the man. Was he intending to kill everyone here? Suspecting Gufei, they kept their distance from him and took their weapons from their dimensional pockets to respond in kind if the need arose. However, Gufei merely stowed away his sword after slaying the man, waved his hand toward young Master Han, bade the Amethyst Rebirth ladies goodbye, and even flashed drifting a smile, showing everyone good etiquette. Hey, hold up. Svelte Dancer moved to stop Gufei from leaving, but she was too late as he had already disappeared in a flash of white light. Ah, did he fly off? Everyone looked up the ceiling in confusion, sharing a sense of loss with one another after. Young Master Han took pity on them and decided to offer them a piece of information. Distinguished guests, that rascal's name is Thousand Miles Drunk. I wish you all the best at befriending him. All the leaders felt that such a conclusion to this matter was already enough. Svelte Dancer's piercing glare made them uncomfortable to ask further about the mage, so they just opted to leave the premise and do their individual sleuthing after. Those leaders who were chatting with Drifting also suggested finding a more private place to continue their conversation. Being able to converse with Parallel World's #1 mage Drifting, personally witnessing the insta-kill mage's fighting prowess, and managing to acquire the insta-kill mage's IGN, these leaders deemed their trip here today as very worthwhile. Truly, their 100 gold coins had been spent well. All these leaders had come to Raise Bar in a hurry for the meet and greet, and now that they were leaving, they did it quite reluctantly. Eventually, the only ones who were still in the bar were the few inquisitive patrons who had stayed to watch the whole affair, the Amethyst Rebirth ladies who were staring with hostility at two individuals, and the said two individuals were young Master Han and Brother Assist. With the crowd of leaders gone, the two men left the corner that they were boxed in moments ago and randomly found a table to occupy. Oi! Svelte Dancer discourteously came up to them. Why did you tell them his name? Hey, are you afraid of them poaching Miles? Young Master Han asked as he glanced at her. Of course. Miles is a member of our guild, Svelte Dancer seriously answered. Relax. All they know is his IGN, how are they gonna poach him with just that? Young Master Han asked. Why would they not be able to? This is an online game, Mister. Names are like phone numbers, wouldn't he be harassed to death at this rate? Svelte Dancer replied with a question. Everyone in Parallel World knows your name, so how come you're not being harassed to death? Young Master Han asked. Oh. Svelte Dancer finally got it as she mumbled. Miles has also set his account in a way that random people can't add him as a friend, right? The question caused young Master Han's confident smile to turn rigid. Gufei might be an exceptional player, but he was not as prominent as the players ranked high on the leaderboards, so there would be no need for him to set a restriction to his friend request setting. Since young Master Han and the ilk had the habit of doing just that, he somehow assumed that Gufei would also do the same. With that thought in his mind, young Master Han hurriedly sent Gufei a message. Have you set your account in a way that random players can't add you as a friend? I did. Gufei replied, why is everyone asking me this? It seemed that Svelte Dancer had also asked him the same question. Young Master Han sighed in relief, not knowing if he should laugh or cry at the moment. This raid today might not have caused any fight, yet it still had been fraught with danger at every corner until the very end. My brain has worked overtime on this, young Master Han muttered to himself, gesturing at Ray for 2 bottles of liquor. Wonder how things are going for those guys who are still busy at work. Young Master Han thought to himself. He then sent Sword Demon, Royal God Call, and War Without Wounds a message each. The plan to hunt down Silver Moon was naturally something he had ordered them to do. I'm looking for an opportunity to strike, Sword Demon quickly replied. He already had his frost memories in hand and was just waiting for a chance to strike his target. He had been tailing Silver Moon since the latter left the spawn point. He was not like Svelte Dancer or Gufei that possessed high attack power. In fact, he might even lose in terms of attack power to the well-equipped thieves out there. Frost memories might have superb additional traits, yet the dagger was already considered as a low-tier weapon by the current standards of the game. But despite Frost Memory's attack power being lower than the available level 40 dagger's attack power out there, Sword Demon continued to use the dagger as his main weapon due to his reluctance to part with its wonderful traits. Fortunately, Sword Demon had made quite a small fortune during the game's official release, which had allowed him to purchase some equipment that boosted his strength as well as attack power. With all those pieces of equipment on him, Sword Demon's attack power was at least not too far off from the acceptable standard, although he was definitely no longer top-notch in terms of damage output. He had no means to take down Silver Moon instantly like how Gufei could, so he refrained from making a move when Silver Moon left the spawn point, as he was worried that the latter would be able to slink back into the safe zone if he failed to finish him off in a timely fashion. Silver Moon was also someone who had been part of countless fights in online games, so he was already on guard for any possible ambush after reviving at the spawn point. Once he left the safety of the spawn point, Silver Moon readied himself to rush back into the spawn point if things went south. Sword Demon had chosen to tail him for 2 reasons. First, he was waiting for Silver Moon to let his guard down. Second, he was waiting for Silver Moon to get far from the spawn point. This was to prevent the latter from escaping him by entering a safe zone. Sword Demon calmly made this judgment and did once underestimate Silver Moon, despite knowing that the latter had already dropped by 2 levels. At the same time, he was confident of his ability, so he did even plan for what he should do if he happened to lose to Silver Moon. Silver Moon had experienced being hunted back in Y City, so his counter-tracking awareness was very sharp and he maintained a careful pace even after leaving the safe zone. After walking for quite a distance, he suddenly turned around and yelled out, "Come out! I've already discovered you!" Sword Demon was stunned. He did not expect that Silver Moon would have the ability to detect someone in stealth like Gufei. He readied himself to enter combat. Usually, a thief would launch their attack once he or she got discovered by the enemy. Sword Demon, for his part, slightly shifted his body, and this small movement allowed him to see through Silver Moon's scheme. Despite changing his position, Silver Moon's eyes still stared at where Sword Demon was originally at. If he were any other thief, he might be unable to discover the other's trickery in time. However, the memory of Gufei seeing through his stealth was already deeply carved into his bones, so he was very sensitive to this sort of thing. The unusual rigidness in Silvermoon's action clued him in on the fact that the man was merely testing the waters. Sword Demon stopped what he was doing. He then silently watched Silvermoon glare at thin air for several seconds before turning around and continuing his way. Sword Demon followed. Silvermoon seemed to have gotten addicted to performing the "I have already discovered you" act, as he did it twice more after. Each time, he would affix a self-assured expression on his face. Sword Demon yawned and continued to watch Silvermoon perform each bluff, all the while calculating how far they were from the spawn point. He would sigh deeply after every calculation, as they were still quite near the safe zone, which meant that Sword Demon would have to trail Silvermoon longer, and that was a nauseating thought. Fortunately, Silvermoon eventually got convinced that he was relatively safe from any ambushers after performing the act thrice, and settled to periodically checking his surroundings for any players who would suddenly jump out to attack him. Sword Demon could not help but be impressed by his dedication to take precaution against an ambush. Silvermoon hailed from another in-game city, so it was hardly believable that he would be familiar with Yunjuan City. Silvermoon eventually chose to walk on a deserted alleyway where he could spot anyone entering it whichever direction the person took. Just as he thought that he was safe from any ambushers, a sudden pain blossomed from his waist and a portion of his HP was gone in an instant. Sword Demon had finally struck. Silvermoon's expression turned to shock. He did expect that a thief would patiently stalk him like this. He was carrying King's Blade in his hand along the way, so he quickly slashed it to his attacker as he turned around. However, his assailant was much faster than him, and before his sword could even chop down, his waist already got skewered for the second time. Silvermoon bellowed. He put all his strength into his slash to vent his pent-up frustration, hoping to cleave the person in two. His one slash cut nothing but air, however. And when Silvermoon completed his turn, he found no one in sight. "Who's there?" Silvermoon exclaimed. He could barely believe his eyes. The stealth state should have ended once the thief had executed his attack. Yet he was unable to find this unknown assailant now that he had turned around. Could this be the rumored Vanish skill? Blank Vanish. Possessing those skills that would only be available at a later stage of the game, were all the players advancing so quickly now? In his state of surprise, he felt another stab puncture at the back of his waist once more. Silvermoon was even more horrified now. His assailant actually did not possess Vanish but was just fast enough to get behind him in the time it took for Silvermoon to turn around. That was right. This opponent was indeed quick on his feet, as he managed to quickly position himself at Silvermoon's rear once more. Silvermoon's shocked exclamations and panicked expression were a surprise to Sword Demon. He had always considered Silvermoon as an expert fighter, yet now that he was actually fighting him, Sword Demon could see that the latter's PvP capabilities were nothing remarkable. He quickly understood why with a deep sigh. Silvermoon was ultimately a knight, and his job class provided him limited exposure to fights like this. He might have accumulated a lot of experiences in other MMOs, but he was now inside a game with a VR setting. The full immersion technology of Parallel World had forced all the players to readjust their past gaming knowledge and adapt to the new environment this game provided, essentially requiring everyone to start from scratch. Gufei's prowess lay in his 20-year worth of experience being in actual fights in reality. As for Sword Demon, his assiduity for studying online games was a match for Gufei's passion toward Kung Fu. Just based on his fighting moves right now, it could be said that he already had a thorough understanding of the thief job class, as expected of a first-rate gamer in the online gaming community. Although Silvermoon tried to fight back, he was ultimately unable to defend against Sword Demon's assault. In no time at all, Silvermoon was sent wailing all the way back to his spawn point without even catching a glimpse of his assailant's face. Sword Demon yawned, sheathed his dagger, and left quietly. In his eyes, this was not a PvP worth mentioning, as his opponent was simply too weak. Chapter 208, Curtain Call over by Ray's Bar. Most of the people had already left. The Amethyst Rebirth ladies also said their goodbyes and took their leave. With their departure, young Master Han and Brother Assist dove straight into that room that they were always occupying. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call rushed over in no time. Seeing that the bar was nearly empty, they quickly figured out what had happened and also hurriedly made their way to their usual room. Inside, Brother Assist was currently counting all the gold coins they had earned from this business venture as young Master Han looked on. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call originally intended to ask about the situation with Silver Moon, but the thought quickly fled their minds upon seeing the dazzling pile of gold coins on the table. The two asked instead, "How much?" Brother Assist just finished emptying the last coin pouch. Lifting his head to look at the two, Brother Assist steadied himself first before he carefully announced, 18,400 gold coins. Wow! War Without Wounds and Royal God Call almost fainted from happiness. We collected 3,000 gold coins, more than what we had initially expected. Although some guilds out there did not come despite our invitation, even more people whom we had not invited turned up. Brother Assist picked up 2 coin pouches and weighed them in his hand. Before the 4 men was not a small mountain of gold coins but a pile of coin pouches stacked up high. 18,400 gold coins. Each of us gets 4,580 gold coins. Ah! Royal God Call danced excitedly. Players could strut on the streets if they had several hundreds of gold coins in their pouches, while those with several thousands of gold coins could nonchalantly order 2 glasses of liquor in the taverns in one go, one to drink and one to pour to waste. "We can't split that much, we have to give some to Drifting," Brother Assist corrected. "That's true. I'll pass it to him, then." Royal God Call nobly volunteered. No one bothered with him. "How much are we giving Drifting?" Brother Assist asked young Master Han. "You gotta at least give me 4,000 gold coins, yeah?" Someone answered. The 4 followed the voice's origin and saw Drifting standing by the entrance of their room. Drifting stared fixedly at the mountain of coin pouches, but his expression was a lot calmer than Royal God Call and War Without Wounds. "Who are you? Get out!" Royal God Call went over to drive him out. Drifting reached out, ruffled Royal God Call's hair, and he pulled him to the side. "I wanna have a death match with you," Royal God Call declared, fuming. 2 more heads poked out from behind Drifting. It was Left Hand of Love and Right Hand of Cool. "Duel means 1 versus 1. You better not play foul," Royal God Call quickly added. No one bothered with him. Left Hand of Love and Right Hand of Cool retracted their heads as Drifting entered the room and casually occupied a seat. "I'm the one who has done the most work today, so I deserve to take 4,000 gold coins." He was not necessarily lying. When Drifting became the man of the hour due to Goofy's disruption, he had to entertain all those leaders and fend off all their queries as best as he could. As for young Master Han and Brother Assist, all they had to deal with was the mental roller coaster that the situation had created. They came close to problems but always managed to extricate themselves from it. The point was that it was not a particularly tiresome task, so it was definitely not as difficult as what Drifting had to go through. "Didn't we already agree on 3,000 gold coins before?" Young Master Han began to negotiate with Drifting. "When did we settle on that?" Drifting shot back. "You opened with 3,000, and I accepted that." Young Master Han raised his 3 fingers. "Didn't you show me 2 fingers to represent 2,000 gold coins, to which I said we would discuss the matter later?" Drifting refuted his claim. Young Master Han shook his head and lifted his 2 fingers. "You're mistaken. This doesn't mean 2,000 gold coins. This means yeah, I accept." Drifting was flabbergasted. "Stop nagging. Since you've already settled the price, just take your money and leave." Royal God Call quickly lifted 3 pouches of 1,000 gold coins and tossed them over to Drifting. "Forget it. 3,000 gold coins it is." Drifting waved his hand, showing his generosity. He then took the 3 pouches and stood up. "I'll take my leave now." With that, he left. Royal God Call stuck himself next to the doorway and watched Drifting leave the bar before turning around and laughing uproariously. "What's so funny?" the 3 asked, nonplussed. "That dumbass." Royal God Call replied between breaths. "Out of the 3 coin pouches I gave him, one only has 400 gold coins in it." The 3 exchanged glances. "It's time for us to split the money." Royal God Call did some quick maths. "There are 16,000 gold coins here, so we can just take 4,000 gold coins each." War Without Wounds was about to say something when young Master Han waved his hand to interrupt. "Let's split the money evenly. Let's not worry about the minor details, or this will never end." War Without Wounds was intending to mention the extra compensation he was promised at the start, but he decided to just forget about it when he heard young Master Han's words. This whole matter had plenty of twists and turns, and it was truly not possible to quickly make a proper account of everything, so they might as well split everything evenly and be done with the matter completely. As the four grabbed 4 coin pouches each, the curtain of the room rustled once more. The 4 of them looked up and Brother Assist was the first to speak. "Hey, Sword Demon." Sword Demon nodded in greeting, entered the room, and took a seat. The 4 were still holding on to their coin pouches, and for some unknown reason, the sight of Sword Demon made them feel somewhat ashamed. War Without Wounds pushed one of the coin pouches in front of him over to Sword Demon. "Want one?" Sword Demon smilingly shook his head. "You're done with Silver Moon?" Royal God Call changed the subject, asking the question he and War Without Wounds had originally wanted to inquire about. Sword Demon nodded his head. "Do we need to inform Miles?" Royal God Call looked at young Master Han with an expression that showed his glee in reveling in someone else's misery. No Smile was one such target that Gufei had set his eyes on, and Royal God Call would love to see Silver Moon experience the same thing as No Smiles. "No need," young Master Han replied. "Ending this only after 3 kills? That's not like you," Royal God Call said. Although young Master Han was a priest, he lacked compassion for others. He's so indifferent that he would even sacrifice them if the need arose, treating enemies and friends alike as cold as the winter's frost. "I mean, we don't have to act on it ourselves anymore," young Master Han clarified. "Who's gonna do it, then?" Royal God Call asked, puzzled. Young Master Han gave a slight smile. "Who else do you think would?" When everyone left, Dusky Cloud also brought his men out in a rush, not even bothering to bid us goodbye. "Oh." The rest of them finally remembered that episode. Such deep hatred. Royal God Call marveled, it's been so long, yet Dusky Cloud still has such strong desire for revenge. Didn't they recognize each other in the bar from the start? Brother Assist wondered. Dusky Cloud was the first to arrive, so he sat by the front. Silver Moon was one of the last few to enter, so he sat behind. If Silver Moon didn't have so many things to say, Dusky Cloud would not even notice him in that crowd. By the way things have turned out, it's likely that Dusky Cloud has already set his eyes on him, yet Silver Moon is still unaware of it, young Master Han explained. "What goes around really comes around." Everyone sighed repeatedly. "Let's just sit and wait for some news." Young Master Han was quite self-possessed as he took up a comfortable pose. "Ray, bring me 2 bottles of your most expensive liquor." Brother Assist and the others immediately stood up to leave the room when they heard this. Everyone would all suffer a huge loss if young Master Han decided to split the bill without warning. Besides young Master Han, the rest of them were unwilling to chip in money for this. The rest ran out of the bar as if they had the devil at their heels, leaving Sword Demon alone with young Master Han. "Want a glass?" Young Master Han asked Sword Demon. Sword Demon shook his head. "How about a pouch, then?" Young Master Han offered a coin pouch to Sword Demon. Sword Demon shook his head still. Young Master Han could only lift his glass and toast to himself. This meet and greet ended quite successfully. "Cheers." With that, he downed the glass in one go. "Successfully?" Sword Demon asked. Young Master Han chuckled. "I have the money, all the guild leaders are pretty much satisfied, and Miles doesn't seem to be holding a grudge. What more could I ask for?" "What?" Sword Demon was not in the meet and greet, so he knew nothing of what had transpired during it. Young Master Han narrated the situation as succinctly as he could, and Sword Demon listened to him wordlessly, only asking at the end, "Miles seems to have come prepared, so who told him?" Young Master Han shrugged his shoulders. "You should ask him that yourself. Brother Assist has announced it on the forums." "Maybe Miles read it there," Sword Demon hypothesized. "Does that guy even know how to visit the forums?" Young Master Han snorted derisively. "That's hard to say for sure," Sword Demon replied. "Then, it's just a coincidence," young Master Han stated simply. It was indeed purely coincidental. Gufei had coincidentally visited the game forums that particular day. However, this was not something unprecedented. Gufei would always visit the forums every 5 levels to search for a grinding map with humanoid monsters that he could use his kung fu on. It just so happened that he rose to level 40 that day, so he visited the forums to begin his research after getting offline. Brother Assist's posts originally did not enter Gufei's notice, but because the matter of an insta-kill mage was riveting to many, his posts made it all the way to the top of the forums. Given his familiarity with Brother Assist, Gufei casually read through one of his posts out of sheer curiosity, only to discover that the latter had continued with his plan to use Gufei in his money-making scheme. Gufei felt very helpless. He did not wish to be treated like a product that could be sold, but he also did not wish to quarrel with his friends over it. In the end, Gufei decided to approach it as something to entertain himself. Covering his face and using a weak spell, Gufei wanted to see how his fellow mercenaries would react when everyone barraged them with questions. Who knew that Drifting's presence in the conference would give young Master Han a chance to redirect the people's attention away from him. After that, Silver Moon's dastardly behavior infuriated Gufei to the point of having to reveal his real fighting ability. Whatever the case might be, this meet and greet was finally settled and the curtain was called. And for the entire Young Masters elite, the timely savior Drifting, and most of the attendees, the event's conclusion was more or less satisfactory. The only one who ended up feeling miserable about everything was Silver Moon. His misery was not about to end any time soon, however, as the street he was walking on to rendezvous with his brothers had been blocked by Dusky Cloud and his companions. "Boss Silver Moon, it's been a while," Dusky Cloud cheerfully called out to him. This trip to Yunju City had really been worthwhile for Dusky Cloud and his buddies. Chapter 209, Exceptional Luck. Silver Moon sputtered when he recognized Dusky Cloud. "I do not think I would see you here in Yunju City." Dusky Cloud flashed him a cold smile. "There are many things that you did not think of." Dusky Cloud was currently in a three-man team, whereas Silver Moon was just by himself. A lone knight who had just lost 3 levels would definitely be no match for 3 opponents, but Silver Moon did not even get flustered and simply said, "How untimely it is to be here today." Dusky Cloud chortled, "Of course. To you, any time I'm near is untimely." Silver Moon shook his head, "You're mistaken." "I'm mistaken?" Dusky Cloud faked a shocked expression. "Does Boss Silver Moon welcome my presence here, then?" Silver Moon smiled, "When you put it that way, I do welcome your presence right now." Just as Dusky Cloud was feeling baffled by Silver Moon's words, he saw Silver Moon place 2 fingers into his mouth and blew through them, creating a high-pitched sound. In an instant, the unassuming players that had set up their stalls along the street as well as the pedestrians that were rushing about to do their businesses or were walking at a leisure pace as they chatted with their companions all turned their attention to Dusky Cloud and his 2 friends. Dusky Cloud and his companions had experienced lots of PvP scenarios in Y City, so they quickly realized that they had walked into a trap. "Did this guy already discover our presence in the bar and only pretended otherwise to set up this trap for us?" Dusky Cloud was regretting his rash action right now. He had clashed with Silver Moon many times in the past, so he had a pretty good grasp of his personality, yet the successful eradication of past deeds as well as his comfortable days leading the people in Y City had made him so full of himself that he had ended up underestimating his opponent. In his eyes, Silver Moon was no longer a strong competitor but was just a lousy mongrel that had abandoned his wife and fellow brothers to flee from the city, forgetting the fact that a lousy mongrel was still a dog in the end and would logically retain its nature. Silver Moon was still a devious person as ever. The delighted expression on Dusky Cloud's face moments ago was now on Silver Moon's face. The anguish Silver Moon had felt from dropping 3 levels earlier was somehow cured by the miserable expression on Dusky Cloud's face. Admiring his handiwork for half a minute, Silver Moon derisively said, "When I said that your arrival is untimely, I was actually thinking from your perspective. Think for your granddad." Dusky Cloud venomously spat as he brought his mates to charge at Silver Moon. Silver Moon also had a good grasp of Dusky Cloud's personality and already predicted that the latter would take an aggressive stance in such a situation. Retreating backward, Silver Moon activated his Swords King's command skill to buff the stats of his surging brothers toward the 3 men. Silver Moon did not have many men and most of them were cumbersome warriors. Dusky Cloud and his mates were seasoned fighters, so they knew that sacrificing 1 or 2 of them might buy time for one person to survive this ambush, but their one for all for one mentality made them choose to fight this PvP together. Dusky Cloud did not waste time defending himself against the attacks of the surrounding players and merely hurled himself towards Silver Moon and stabbed him. Silver Moon had high defense, so that one stab was not fatal to him, but it was still powerful enough to cause him to break out in cold sweat. His men then descended a flurry of blades on Dusky Cloud and turned the latter into a beam of white light, snapping Silver Moon back into his senses. That bastard has gotten a lot stronger since our last fight. His equipment is pretty up as well. Silver Moon spat on the ground. The ones who should be here didn't show up, yet the ones who shouldn't be here unintentionally served themselves up to me. Silver Moon finally had a bit of good luck here in this night filled with bad lucks. After being roughed up by Royal God Call and War Without Wounds and being assassinated by the unknown thief, Silver Moon surmised that his enemies were planning to hunt him down, so he set up the strap with him as the bait to draw the enemies out and take his revenge. But Dusky Cloud was the one that showed up instead. Shit. Did that guy actually travel all the way from Y City to Yunjuan City just to hunt me down? Silver Moon mumbled to himself. A month had passed since he had last been in Y City. The hatred and grudges between players in online games usually would not last this long, but Silver Moon's case was special. Firstly, both sides had spent a long time fighting and killing one another in Y City, so the resentment they had for one another were bone deep. Secondly, Silver Moon had fled from the city just as the Guild War victors Dusky Cloud and crew were starting to enjoy themselves hunting and killing the past deeds members, so their desire to eliminate Silver Moon only strengthened over time. Thirdly, Dusky Cloud no longer viewed Silver Moon as a rival and thought that eliminating the latter would now be a simple task. In the end, this one skirmish had sent Dusky Cloud and company all the way back to Y City to revive, as they had yet to log off and record their character data in any of Yunjuan City's spawn points before. However, Silver Moon did not know of this. He had not noticed Dusky Cloud and company at Ray's bar, as he had been focusing all his attention on Young Masters Elite. At this moment, he was thinking that Dusky Cloud might bring his 500-man reinforcement to eliminate his 30 or 40-man group. Silver Moon had just arrived in Yunjuan City a couple of days ago, so the development of the mercenary group he had just established was average at best. Moreover, no matter how capable Silver Moon was, competing for talent with the long-standing mercenary groups in the city was just impossible, so he simply had no way of hastening the recovery of his former might. Dusky Cloud only had to send 100 men over, and the small fire Silver Moon had managed to start up here in Yunjuan City would be stomped out of existence once more. Thinking up to this, Silver Moon no longer dared to loiter in this street. Silver Moon let his men disperse on their own, and after inquiring for some information, he made his way to a spawn point and logged off with a restless heart. With that, the trap that had originally been set up for Young Masters Elite was abandoned by Silver Moon after Dusky Cloud's unexpected disruption. It could be said that Young Masters Elite was exceptionally lucky today. On Gufei's end, he had teleported himself into the bounty assignment hall after killing his target and Silver Moon's remaining lackey at Ray's bar. He was choosing a new mission to PvP for a bit as he erased his park value. Around this time, he would usually be participating in the Guild vs Guild tournament, but due to Amethyst Rebirth's elimination, he could only make do with doing bounty mission at present. Participating in the tournament is truly much more fun, Gufei forlornly thought to himself once more. Currently, bounty mission could no longer satisfy Gufei's appetite. Since leveling up increased in difficulty the higher the player's level became, more and more people started cherishing their lives. As a corollary, the city had gotten a lot more peaceful. At present, 80% to 90% of Gufei's bounty mission targets were new players under level 30. They were so weak that Gufei could not feel even the slightest bit of enjoyment slaying them. It had been a while since he had chanced upon a worthy reward like that guild leader at Ray's bar after that morning with Brave Surge. To others, rewards were something they would receive upon completing quests, missions, and such. Gufei, for his part, treated his bounty mission target as the reward itself. The higher the level or the stronger the foe, the more Gufei valued the reward. It was rare for Gufei to have a suggestion toward the improvement of the game, but he really wished that the wanted players list would not just list the serial numbers and park value of the targets and would show the fugitives' levels as well. Despite this being the case, Gufei was still hoping to strike the lottery. Just as he exited the hall after submitting his bounty mission result and getting a new one, he happened to bump into Drifting. "You're doing missions, huh? How diligent," Drifting remarked. When he had just arrived in Yunjuan City, He had thought that doing bounty mission was a popular activity in it. Only later did he find out that Goofy alone had such a unique hobby. "Is there something you need me for?" Goofy asked, realizing that Drifting had been waiting for him. As Drifting nodded his head in confirmation, Goofy pressed on, "What is it about?" "I just wanna know how you have unleashed that weak spell at Ray's bar. I'm certain that Miles Bro's spell damage is not that low. Plus, your sword's erratic movement should have made it impossible to cast that spell despite you properly chanting its incantation." It seemed that Drifting's dedication to learning the ins and outs of online games was as strong as Sword Demon's. There were many things that had happened at Ray's bar involving him, yet his question to Goofy was only about his unusual casting of that spell back then. Clearly, he was in the middle of studying the spell system of Parallel World. Drifting might have seemed as if he was very into his conversation with all those guild leaders back then, but he had actually been pondering over this question all that while. Therefore, if he did not get an answer from the horse's mouth right now, he would be unable to sleep peacefully tonight. "What do you think?" Goofy asked, smiling. "Did Miles Bro perhaps get a friend to help him with that spell?" "You were chanting it, but the spell was actually unleashed by someone else?" Drifting thought that this was already the most logical explanation for the matter. Goofy smiled as he shook his head. "How did you cast it, then?" "It seems that my method is pretty effective, as even an expert mage like you couldn't see through it." "Watch." Goofy pulled up his sleeve and wriggled his fingers on his left hand, as if he was about to perform a magic trick. As Drifting intently watched his movement, Goofy's right hand fished out moonlit nightfalls and whirled it madly in the air. Twin Incineration. Incinerate. Twin Incineration is an instant cast spell. There's no way. Drifting thought that Goofy was trying to fool him, so he unhappily uttered this, only to stop short of completing his statement. Goofy's sword was not the only one aglow, his left hand was ablaze as well. In the next moment, Goofy's left hand lashed out to chop, creating the afterglow of Twin Incineration. "Did you get all that?" Goofy asked, smiling ever so slightly. Drifting already wore the expression of someone who had had an epiphany. "You set your dominant hand as the left, and used it to unleash your spell. That's why the mad waving of your right hand did not affect your spell casting, and why the weapon's spell damage did not factor in either, resulting into your blazing 3 of 1,000 Inferno having a weak spell damage." "You're an expert all right," Goofy commended. "If I were an expert, I would guess it right away." Drifting shook his head in sadness. "Thanks, Miles Bro. Looks like I won't have a sleepless night, after all." "Continue on with your missions, I'll take my leave now." The two bade each other farewell and went their separate ways, with Goofy sprinting off to the coordinates of his bounty mission target. Chapter 210 to 100% Appraisal. Goofy did bounty missions so often that he now only had to glance once at the coordinates to determine the direction he should head to. In fact, as long as it was within Yunjuan City's borders, Goofy could tell which street his target was walking on from just seeing the coordinates. After observing the changes in the coordinates, Goofy could even determine where the target would head next. "Oh, no!" Goofy shouted to himself when he saw the changes in the coordinates of his freshly acquired bounty mission target and quickened his pace. His target was currently moving toward the direction of the Archer range. There were usually two reasons why players would head to the spawn points. One was to learn skills and second was to log off. The latter being the reason for going to a spawn point was more common than the former. A target logging off was fatal to someone doing bounty mission. Goofy was quite far from the Archer range, so he sprinted all the way to it and even activated his blink whenever possible. All the while, he was praying hard for his target's purpose in the Archer range to be a different sort. Unfortunately for Goofy, luck did not always go with the wishes of man. As Goofy fervently wished that his target was not heading to the Archer range to log off, the man headed there to do exactly that. Just as he had the Archer range in sight, the Windchaser's emblem suddenly stopped working. Goofy promptly pulled up his mission log and saw that the target's serial number was darkened, a state showing that the person was offline. Goofy heaved a long sigh. He was not afraid of the man logging off. Instead, Gufei was saddened because he could no longer pick up another bounty mission for today, being able to pick up only one bounty target at a time. This was yet another area that Gufei thought the system for the bounty mission needed improvement. Gufei reckoned that this would be yet another failed mission. It was not as if he had not experienced such an outcome before. Missions that he picked up at night where the targets logged off before he could reach them meant that the targets would likely clear off their park value the next morning before he could get online. Whenever those happened, the missions would be labeled as failed. This was how the previous streak, which awarded him the Windchaser's boots for completing 100 consecutive bounty mission, was finally broken. There was a possibility that completing 200, 300, or even 500 consecutive bounty mission would award him other items, but Gufei's 176th bounty mission sadly met with failure. Currently, Gufei only had to complete 24 more bounty mission without failing once and he would be able to attain 200 consecutive bounty mission. Completing bounty mission consecutively is really difficult, Gufei sighed to himself. However, the completion count of bounty mission would not be affected by this failure. Gufei was currently on his 199th mission, so 2 more completed missions would allow him to hit 200. He got the Windchaser's emblem when he completed 100 bounty mission, so completing 200 bounty mission might also award him with something. It was a pity that his consecutive completion record was finally broken. This stop here meant he would have to start all over again, which really made him feel quite vexed. Gufei disappointingly paced about at the archer range, thinking that his target might have only logged off to use the toilet and would be back right away. In the end, Gufei's mission log remained unlit. Gufei was so upset that he did not feel like grinding his levels anymore and just went offline as well. The next day, Gufei tried to log on as early as he could in hopes of possibly completing the mission. Alas, the quest was already tagged as failed when he logged on. But seeing that he was only 2 missions off from attaining the 200 completed bounty mission, he was eager to see what sort of reward he would get for it. So Gufei swiftly went to obtain another bounty mission and proceeded to slay his target. Once the second mission was completed, he immediately returned to the bounty assignment hall to turn in his mission's result. Just as he had expected, the system sounded. However, it did not send a mission reward and instead informed Gufei, "Your Windchaser's emblem has been upgraded." Gufei quickly took out his Windchaser's emblem and had a look. Windchaser's emblem was a trinket that had 2 traits attached to it. The first trait decreased the coordinates refresh rate down to a minute when doing bounty mission, while the second trait allowed him to teleport himself into the bounty assignment hall upon completion of a mission. Now, listed below the 2 traits was a third trait, 100% appraisal of bounty mission target. This feature meant that when doing bounty mission, Gufei could completely ignore the level as well as the appraisal skills rank of his target and appraise the person fully. This 100% appraisal trait was very useful to the average players, as it would allow them to gauge the target's strength and see if they were up to par or formulate an idea on how to fight the targets. As for Gufei, this feature did have some use. Although he did not often appraise his target when PvPing, it was only because his appraisal skills rank was too low, receiving only a whole bunch of question marks whenever he used it. This sort of skill required a player to spend time doing quests to raise its rank, but where would he find the time and effort to do that? As such, he could only use it as often as he could when he had nothing better to do and slowly raise its rank. Therefore, the difference in rank between him and the average player slowly widened, giving him more and more question marks every time he used appraisal. Gufei's appraisal skill seemed to only exist in name, but with the upgrade of his Windchaser's emblem, Gufei could at least fully appraise his bounty mission targets. Gufei hurriedly grabbed a fresh bounty mission to test the new trait out. It had been a long time since a PvP maniac with high park value appeared on the wanted players list. This was not something unique to just Yunjuan City, either. On the overall wanted players list, it could be seen that the mentality of the players regarding this meta progressed at the same pace. Leaving the bounty assignment hall, Gufei sprinted toward his target's location, which was the Central Plaza's tavern. Gufei loved such targets, as they would indefinitely remain in their positions inside taverns, so the chances of failing the missions were almost zero. Such targets would certainly be together with their friends, so they could trigger Goofy's favorite hidden mode and bounty mission, exchanging blows with the target's friends. Goofy made a beeline to the tavern and swiftly entered the premise. He immediately spotted his target with serial number 19,857 hovering above the person's head. Goofy did not hurry to engage the target and instead chose to use the 100% appraisal trait of his Windchaser's emblem. As expected, the trait provided him complete data of his target from head to toe. Goofy felt quite disappointed when he saw that his target was just a level 34 mage with common grade equipment. Sighing deeply, he walked over to the target's table and knocked on its surface. Bounty mission. The table occupants did not react strongly to his declaration and merely curiously raised their heads, showing a surprised expression on their faces when they saw Goofy. Goofy, for his part, found the table occupants that were about Royal God Call's age to be quite familiar. Before he could put a finger on where he had seen them, someone on the table blurted out, "Teacher Goofy." With this shout, all the table occupants stood up in their panic and embarrassment. "Ah!" Goofy exclaimed as he realized that they were all students of Yule in middle school where he was a teacher. Those who went to school knew that the normal subject teachers would rarely recognize a whole class of students. This was especially true for the physical education teachers that handled more classes and had limited interaction with every student. Most PE teachers would only be able to recognize those students who were more exceptional physically. As for Goofy, he would definitely pay special attention to students who knew a bit of Kung Fu, but he would treat them equally otherwise, which basically meant that he knew only a handful of students. The table occupants were students that Goofy would always see during class, so he could somewhat recall them. But if anyone requested for him to name them all, he would not be able to do so. In contrast, students would always know their teachers. After restraining themselves for a short while, several of them blatantly said, "Turns out Teacher Goofy is also playing this game." Goofy was only a PE teacher, which was very different from the usual subject teachers that these students would see every day, so they were not particularly nervous in front of him. Furthermore, Teacher Goofy was the butt of jokes in school. If the one standing before them were a class teacher, they would long disappear upon recognizing the person. These students were therefore acting really carefree in front of him, while Goofy felt somewhat uncomfortable with this situation. "Teacher Goofy, what did you say when you knocked on the table?" a student asked. "It's nothing. I'm just passing by," Goofy fibbed. "You guys play on, I'm leaving first." Teacher Goofy, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Let's play together," a student boldly called out. His voice was loud, so it naturally attracted eyes on them. "Teacher? Student?" All the nearby players began to ask these questions to one another as they glanced over to their direction. Goofy was born into a family of Kung Fu practitioners, so the prevailing rule in the family was to honor the teachers and respect their teachings. Although his teacher-student relationship was rather different from that of his family's, he still considered it as improper to play games with his students. Seeing that they now had the attention of everyone in the tavern, he hurriedly bade these students goodbye and swiftly left the premise. Ever since Goofy started playing Parallel World, this was the first time he had panicked the most, and it was mainly due to the psychological distress the meeting brought him. He sprinted out of the door and used Blink whenever possible. The students were all around level 30, so they soon lost sight of Goofy despite trying their best to chase after him. "Whoa! Teacher Goofy ran so fast. He must be a pro," a student exclaimed as he stared intently at where Goofy had disappeared to. "Teacher Goofy seems to be a mage, so how could he run so fast?" another student asked. "Did anyone manage to appraise him?" "What's the result?" someone questioned. "I can't appraise anything. Teacher Goofy's level is way higher than ours." "Wow!" Everyone was in awe. "What huge news!" "Teacher Goofy actually plays Parallel World, and he's actually in our city to boot," someone excitedly commented. "Haha, let's get Teacher Goofy to join our guild." That's right. Let's go look for Alpha." "Ah, we forgot to ask Teacher Goofy's IGN. How are we gonna find him?" "You're so dumb. We can ask him during class." "Oh, true.